One is the Vikram lander, the other is the rover Pragyan, which is then going to be on the lunar surface. So let's take a look at what rover Pragyan looks like and what really is the point of this entire exploration. Now, the fact that the Pragyan is going to be on the lunar surface is to ensure that we find out what exactly exists on the lunar surface. So Pragyan is going to be looking for elements in the lunar soil, send that data back for analysis. The assessment of chemical and elemental composition is also going to take place by Pragyan. We're also then going to be seeing the rover ensure that that analysis is sent back to ISRO. That is not only going to help with this particular exploration, but several other moon missions, not just for India, but for the rest of the world as well. So this is really going to set the stage of what happens next in the space race, not just for India, but for the rest of the world as well, because we know there are several other countries that are also waiting to reach the moon to do what India is aiming to do tomorrow. So far, what has happened as far as Chandrayaan 3 is concerned? Let's take a look at the trajectory of what has transpired since. 14th of July is when the takeoff happened. Journey for Chandrayaan 3 began from Sriharikota here in India. The first milestone was 24 hours later on the 15th of July when the first orbit raising maneuver took place. That was milestone number 1. Let's go to milestone number 2 now, when Chandrayaan 3 was inserted into the translunar orbit. That is where it took off from on the 1st of August. 4 days later, on the 5th of August, the third milestone was achieved for this particular mission and for ISRO when it was then inserted into the lunar orbit. Remember, it's over 40-day journey for Chandrayaan 3 for the Vikram lander and for the rover Pragyan. The fourth milestone was that of achieving orbit circularization phase. That happened on the 14th of August. On 17th, there was the most important milestone as far as this entire journey for Chandrayaan 3 goes, and that really was the separation of the two modules, which is the propulsion module and the lander module. That was the difference between the two Chandrayaan missions, Chandrayaan 2 and Chandrayaan 3. 18th of August is when the deboosting maneuver was completed, and that would ensure that Vikram and Pragyan, the lander and the rover, were heading towards the lunar surface. So we would see the touchdown happen tomorrow at 6:04 p.m. Let's take a listen to some of the reactions that are coming in, because India is praying for success and the world is watching as we do so.
Could you please explain our viewers right from the scratch, from launch to the soft touching that is going to take place tomorrow?
Chandrayaan 3, as you know, on July 14th, it was lifted off by GSLV launch vehicle, and it took around the orbit of the Earth. It did not directly went to the moon, because the fuel that is required to take any satellite to moon will be huge, and also the expense will be multiple. So in order to reduce the cost of the mission, and also non-availability of the very strong rocket, right, which can directly take the satellite to the moon. So it was thought of taking satellites many times around the Earth, and using the Earth's gravitation, the satellites increases its velocity and reaches the lunar orbit. So after it gets captured by the by the moon, right? It goes around in many orbits, and it slows down itself, and it has reached about the closest orbit, that is about 25 kilometers in altitude. So once it has reached its final orbit around the moon of 25 kilometers, it will stabilize itself. So once it gets stabilized, then the major mission of soft landing will take place.
So definitely that because last time we could not achieve, because we till this phase we did very well last time also, but the landing portion only we could not achieve properly. So definitely that's what this time it's a very anxious moment. Everybody is working, looking it very anxiously for this event to happen. And I am sure that this time it will be a grand success.
30 किलोमीटर की एल्टीट्यूड या हाइट से लैंडर नीचे की ओर चंद्र की सतह पर जाने का प्रयास करेगा, 23 अगस्त को लगभग 157 बाय 167 किलोमीटर की कक्षा में था। वो अभी 113 बाई 113 की ऑर्बिट में घूम रहा है और उसको 100 बाई 30 किलोमीटर की ऑर्बिट में जाने के बाद 23 अगस्त को 30 किलोमीटर की ऊंचाई से वह नीचे की ओर प्रयाण करेगा। जो लैंडर मॉड्यूल की हेल्थ चेकिंग, टेलीमेट्री और चंद्र में जो स्थिति है उसको सबको ध्यान में रखते हुए कोई और मुश्किल तो आने वाली है नहीं और हम पूर्णतया 23 अगस्त को ही चंद्र पे उतरने का प्रयास करेंगे। बट अगर कोई हमको ऐसा आपत्तिजनक लगता है तो हम लैंडिंग को पोस्टपोन करके 27 अगस्त को करेंगे।
At 6:04 p.m. tomorrow is when the first attempt for touchdown is going to be made. That is going to happen on the dark side of the moon, as it's called, the south side. That is where India is going to be attempting to land Vikram and Pragyan, the lander and the rover. A soft landing attempt is going to be made. So what exactly is going to happen tomorrow? There are 15 minutes, the last 15 minutes as far as this operation goes, as far as this mission goes, are the most terrifying ones. That is when Chandrayaan 2 faltered, which is why all eyes are going to be on those final 15 minutes. But ISRO is prepared. ISRO has learned from its mistakes from 2019. All of those changes were made this time around and they are hopeful, they're confident that tomorrow victory is going to be ours. India right now on the cusp of history, but tomorrow is going to be India's day when that soft landing happens. And as you see on your screens, that is Vikram, the lander, carrying Pragyan, the rover, which is going to be exploring not just the south side of the moon, but the lunar surface. Several discoveries are expected to be made as far as this entire mission goes. It's not only historic for India because India makes that touchdown, but it is going to be important as far as all other lunar missions in the future are concerned. There are several other countries that are waiting to be part of this elite club. Remember, India is only just the 4th country that is going to be part of this coveted club that has actually made it to the moon and landed on the lunar surface. We did so with Chandrayaan 1. Unfortunately, Chandrayaan 2 was not a success, but we've learned from those mistakes, from those past experiences, and tomorrow is going to be India's day, and that really is the message that is coming in from all quarters. Listen in to some more reactions coming in.
सभी विशेषज्ञों ने, हमारे वैज्ञानिकों ने रचा है और प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में भारत नई ऊंचाइयां तो छू ही रहा था। भारत का तिरंगा केवल देश के अंदर नहीं लेकिन विश्व पटल पर अब हमारी यही कोशिश है कि वो तिरंगा चांद पे भी गाड़ के रखा जाए।
24 hours to go before its touchdown, and it is the moment of truth for India. It's the moment, the historic one at that ISRO is waiting for, that 1 billion Indians are praying for. The world is of course watching in awe and in inspiration, because this is the moment that not only India has been waiting for, but all of our allies are also hoping for success. The world is hoping that this really sets the benchmark of what's to come next. Now let's take a look at what exactly is going to happen tomorrow as far as the two major components of this entire mission is concerned. We spoke about the Pragyan rover. Now let's talk about the lander, which is Vikram, that is carrying this rover to the lunar surface. Now Vikram is going to be investigating the spectral and polarimetric measurements of the lunar surface. The measure near the near surface plasma density is also something that Vikram is going to look at. All of that data is then going to be sent back to Earth, to ISRO, for further analysis. Also is going to be the study of gas and plasma environment, which is going to be extremely important as far as Vikram's role in this entire mission is concerned. Thermal properties and surface temperature is also going to be measured by the lander, all of which will again be transmitted back to Earth, to ISRO, for further analysis. Seismicity around the landing site is also going to be measured by the lander, which is very, very important, because that is when it will determine whether rover Pragyan gets out, for how long, whether the landing site will have to be changed last minute. All of that will be done by commands from the ISRO command center. A passive experiment to understand the dynamics of the moon is also going to be undertaken by this particular lander Vikram. We're also going to be seeing the lander ensure that all of this data is sent back to Earth for further analysis. Remember, it is a 14-day shelf life of this particular lander that is going to be on the surface of the moon, sending back data that is extremely crucial, not just to this mission like I have been pointing out, but to missions to come. Also going to be extremely crucial as far as the Mars mission goes, because many believe that the south side of the moon is going to be an ideal pit stop perhaps when we look at the further Mars missions for several other missions, including that of India is concerned. Let's now take a look at the one experiment or the one mission that failed just 3 days ago. That was Russia's Luna 25. Remember, if it would have landed on the moon, it would have been the first one before India to land on the south side of the moon. Unfortunately for Russia, that did not happen. So what exactly went wrong? Let's take a look at that. On the 11th of August is when Russia launched Luna 25, its mission to the moon. The aim was to attempt a soft landing on the moon, much like what India also has been planning and is intending to do tomorrow. On the 21st of August, it was expected to reach the South Pole, which is the south side of the moon. On the 19th of August, the spacecraft unfortunately crashed on the lunar surface. So what exactly happened and what went wrong? All of the analysis is now happening. The first reason why Russia believes that the mission actually failed and that the lander crashed is because there was a deviation from what the calculated parameters were and what actually happened when the landing took place. So that kind of discrepancy is what led to their failure, is what they believe. Also, they believe that the devices switched to an off-design orbit, something that they hadn't really accounted for. There wasn't really a plan B as far as the Russian space agency goes if this happened, which is why, unfortunately for Russia, Luna 25 crashed and that mission was a failure. All eyes now are going to be on Chandrayaan, which is touchdown tomorrow. For the next 24 hours, CNN News 18 is going to be your destination for all things Chandrayaan. With that, we are slipping into a quick break.
Gears up to attempt its first ever moon landing. We'll give you all the updates from the ISRO headquarters in Bengaluru.
From the voices that matter, the latest discoveries of Chandrayaan 3 from the lunar surface.
Watch CNN News 18 as we bring you all the updates and details of the India's historic moon mission.
So keep watching CNN News 18 as we bring you the mood of India, ISRO and all the details related to Chandrayaan 3.
It's got a break, decelerate, they'll continue in the same orbit.
Let's shift focus from Chandrayaan now to some more breaking news that's coming in, and this is from the Jadavpur University in West Bengal. In the light of what transpired over the last few days, the protests that were triggered after the death of a first-year student, now we're learning that Chief Minister of West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, has launched an anti-ragging helpline number. We're now given to understand that this number has now been launched for statewide university and for colleges. Remember, all of these universities are expected to have an anti-ragging cell. They're supposed to have a committee that looks into these allegations. But unfortunately, in the case of Jadavpur University, that was not happening, which is what the allegation is as far as many of the students are concerned. The anti-ragging helpline number has now been launched by Mamata Banerjee. What is going to be the scope of this? If it's meant only for universities or across colleges and schools as well, that is something that we will get more details on. But so far what we're learning is that action has been taken by Mamata Banerjee in the wake of the deaths of a first-year student at Jadavpur University. Remember, the allegations was that he was ragged in the hostel of the Jadavpur University, mostly by students who were past students, in fact, who had already graduated but were still living in the hostel premises, most of whom who have been arrested in this particular case so far. Now, days later, the state government jumping into action, forming this number, launching it to ensure that we do not see a repeat of such instances in any other university. Moving on from that now to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is in South Africa for the BRICS summit. He's just about landed in Johannesburg, is what we're now learning. The Prime Minister has a packed schedule for the next 24 hours. In fact, in just a few minutes from now, he is going to be at the ceremonial welcome for all the BRICS leaders. South Africa is the host country this time around, which is why the summit is in Johannesburg. Prime Minister Modi there just about landing. His first engagement is going to be the opening comments that are being made by all the BRICS leaders. Prime Minister Modi is expected to speak sometime post 8 p.m. tonight. Abhishek, my colleague, now joining us, getting us more details. Abhishek, the Prime Minister has just landed is what we are learning. We're yet to see that ceremonial welcome coming in from the airport. Even as he makes his way from the airport to his hotel, we are going to be seeing the diaspora lined up as we do in every other country he visits.
Of course, and there was this planning of diaspora. We have seen several comments by some of the Indian diaspora who have been living in Johannesburg for generations that they're pretty excited about Prime Minister's visit, and they are hoping to have some chance to have a kind of interaction also with the Prime Minister if Prime Minister happens to address a diaspora gathering living in Johannesburg. Meanwhile, Prime Minister's official schedule is really busy because as he has landed within hours, he is going to start his interaction with BRICS leaders. The 15th BRICS Summit Business Forum Leaders session that will be starting in 1 hour from now. And the statements will be made by all the leaders from South Africa. Cyril Ramaphosa, the president, will be making this statement. From Russia, Sergei Lavrov, who has been representing the Russian Federation, will be present. However, most likely President Putin will also be making this statement through video conferencing. From Brazil, the President De Silva has arrived. And from China, President Xi Jinping has already arrived. He is also arrived in South Africa as a state guest. So all the 5 leaders of BRICS countries are going to be under one roof, and then they'll be making a very detailed statements of about 20 minutes. And after that, their leaders will arrive at Summer Palace, where there will be a photo opportunity. Probably all the leaders will be in one frame.
Yes.
One of the rare occasions, especially in the context of India-China bilateral relationship, that Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping could be clicked in one frame. Yep.
And that will be most important, that first image of Prime Minister Narendra Modi with President Xi Jinping, whether there's a bilateral or not, there is no confirmation yet from the Ministry of External Affairs, but many believe that there is going to be at least a pull aside, if not a bilateral meeting between the two leaders, and all eyes are going to be on that meeting. Abhishek, do stay on with me, because like we've been discussing, the Indian diaspora is awaiting Prime Minister Modi's arrival in Johannesburg. Listen in to some of these reactions that came in earlier today.
I just wanted to share that we believe that the meeting of the BRICS summit is going to be extremely important for South Africa as well as India. We are so proud of the fact that Shri Narendra Modi ji is going to be here on our soil, bringing with him the value systems of India to Africa. And he understands that the ancient value systems all over the world, which is exemplified by the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, is very important.
मोदी जी का तो बहुत बेसब्री से यहाँ पे इंतजार है, और हम लोग कहते हैं दिल बिछा के हम लोग इंतजार कर रहे हैं. और क्योंकि मैं इस आयुर्वेदा बिजनेस में हूँ, तो मैं ये चाहूँगी कि मोदी जी जब आए तो हमारे लोगों को हमारे देश के आयुर्वेद के हिसाब से ब्रिक्स को आगे प्रोत्साहित करें कि ये हमारे आयुर्वेदिक मेडिसिन को आगे बढ़ाया जाए.
There is a diaspora event that's planned for the Prime Minister as well, on expected lines when he travels abroad, but about business, and it is going to be about the BRICS summit, about India and the Prime Minister being the voice of the global South. And that's really something that the Prime Minister spoke of just before he left for Johannesburg this morning. Let's take a look at what he said in his departure statement as he embarked on this crucial tour to Johannesburg. This is what the Prime Minister said. He said he's looking forward to holding bilateral meetings on the sidelines of the crucial summit. This is an opportunity to identify areas of cooperation, not just between the grouping, but between different wheels of this entire alliance as well. The BRICS is a platform for cooperation agenda. That's really something that we have to look at, and we have to find common ground, was the message that the Prime Minister sent. The BRICS platform is to discuss issues of concern, issues concerning the global south, and their agenda needs to be the voice that comes out in this particular summit, is what the Prime Minister said. Development imperatives also on agenda. That is also what the Prime Minister spoke of in his departure statement. Reform of the multilateral system is going to be in focus. Remember, there is a lot of talk as far as expansion of the BRICS grouping is concerned, which is why the Prime Minister also focusing on that. Abhishek Jha continues to be with us, getting us the latest on that. Abhishek, as far as the expansion of the BRICS grouping is concerned, what is really India's stand, and who are the countries that are eyeing to be part of this grouping?
So the expansion is on the agenda this time, especially China and Russia. They are keen on having this, large number of countries who want to be the part of this grouping. While India, US, India, South Africa, and Brazil, they have been little hesitant about diluting their stake in this 5-member grouping, because the minute the more members are included in the grouping, their problems and their concerns will also be part of the agenda that the group will try to address. The group, which has been conceived as an developmental bloc and which help each other in having economic development for furthering their economic interests, doesn't want to be in the quagmire of geopolitics and geoeconomic, unpredictability. In that context, that has been kind of a situation why India has not been very keen on having it. But yesterday, Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra has cleared India's intention that India is looking at the proposals and the whole issue of expansion with an open mind. But only the countries who want to be the members, they will have to abide by the guidelines. The membership will have to be approved by the guiding principle that the BRICS member states have laid out, years ago. And as for that, if the expansion happens, talking about the countries, from the entire world, 22 countries have lined up to be the member of this grouping. The countries are from Gulf to Europe to South, to Africa and to Asia. From Saudi, UAE, Iran, Bolivia. You have Greece also, Turkey. They are all, Indonesia. They are all wanting to become part of this major grouping, and that is also, if it happens, it will be a huge, counterbalancing to G7 and other
absolutely, and that fine balancing act is what India also needs to look at as far as the inclusion or the exclusion of certain of these member nations are concerned, if there is an expansion of the BRICS grouping at all. We'll keep an eye out on that, as for the next 24 hours, we see all of the BRICS grouping leaders convene there in Johannesburg. Abhishek will continue getting us those details. For now, it's time for a quick break. Back in just a few minutes.
Yes, it would help a lot. Definitely, knowing that somebody has resigned against you once, that you've done it once, you know that it's possible. A lot of people, when they play Magnus, they're not even sure what is possible. But he knows that he can do it, but equally he knows how strong Magnus is. So, but that's something to draw from. I've done this before. When an opportunity arises, I've punished him before. And as much as Prag knows it, I think Magnus knows it as well. So Magnus will be just a little bit wary thanks to those wins. These things always help.
Yes, actually Magnus Carlsen said after one of Pragananda's previous victories that we all want to be like him. So this young 18-year-old boy has a lot of fans even amongst his peers, if I can call them that. Just the journey that Pragananda has had is enormous.
Yes, very much. He has a lot of fans, and somehow people like calling him Prag, and they like looking at that name and thinking, what's going on here? I can add that there was a joke that he's a new Indian, but he's still got Anand in his name.
Oh.
But anyway, he's actually very popular. He has many fans, and most of the top players think of him very warmly as well. On top of that, you only have to see his mother and his sister, and you root for the whole family. It's very touching.
Absolutely. Anand, I did want to touch upon the fact that you talked about Magnus Carlsen, that you've punished him in the past, but you did lose your World Chess Championship title to Magnus Carlsen. What would be, have you first of all spoken to Prag at all and shared any tips or any kinds of words of encouragement?
We have discussed Carlson on multiple occasions, of course.
Yeah.
But I haven't been talking to him much during this World Cup. When I was in Baku, I spoke to him a few times. But mostly, a chess player at this moment is in their own bubble. And I'm not sure what it would do to him. And by the way, it's not like his journey here was predestined. So in every match, I thought, my God, he must be nervous. I'm not going to get close. I think he has a support system. He depends on his mother and perhaps his sister to say the right things at the right time. If he reaches out to me, of course, I'll help him. But he's very focused and I respect that right now.
Yes.
But through, even in our time at the West Prajanand Academy, I've interacted with him a lot, given him a lot of tips. But this is not the time to butt in.
I understand that. I do want to ask you, this is not just about what happens between the years or on the 64 squares. When you're playing such championships, it's a lot else that also matters. From your experience, what is that one thing that is truly crucial for somebody in Pragyananda's shoes tonight, apart from his game?
Pragyananda's level is high enough, and right now it's very high. So if you don't take his actual rating, but his performance rating, the clip he's performing at, it's much higher. And therefore, the difference between him and Magnus is not purely technical. I mean, certainly Magnus has great technical skills. The difference will be mental. Can he be tenacious like he has shown before? Can he take opportunities when they come up? Can he simply sit there and make good moves, one after the other, without his judgment wavering? It will be mental. What happens today and tomorrow will be mental. It won't be their chess abilities. That both of them, it's high enough.
Yes. So how did someone like you prepare? Just give us an idea of what really transpires in your mind, what your routine is like before a big final like this. Maybe, I'm sure every chess player would be a little bit different too, but maybe that will give us a bit of an idea of how you prepare.
It's a lot of visualization. You're constantly thinking, where will he strike? What will he do? If I was sitting in his room right now and looking at my games, what would I aim at? You're trying to anticipate moves. You're trying to anticipate situations. You may also think, if we unexpectedly stumble on this, can I cope with the challenges? Will he be able to cope? Will I be able to cope? There's a lot of visualization going on, but equally you want to relive your past experiences in this situation and think, what are the things that went wrong? What are the things right? How do I close that gap? It's a lot of that. It's a lot of fretting and trying to guess. Because, if you guess correctly, that's 50% of the journey.
Yes. Could nerves be an issue because of the fact that, Prag is younger and less experienced than Magnus Carlsen, certainly as far as the stage is concerned?
Nerves are always decisive at a stage like this. Also, remember, both of them want this very badly.
Yes.
And they waited a long time for it. And I think, in fact, that is slightly harder for Magnus because he has missed the opportunity more often.
Yes.
So when he gets there, he really doesn't want to miss this time. And nerves will play an important part. In fact, there will be several mistakes. It's normal. Under the tension, both of them will wilt. There will be several mistakes and so on. But can you keep control after those mistakes? That will be the key.
In some ways, could it also be beneficial for Pragyananda that he's kind of the challenger here and the underdog?
Yes, I think he's clearly the underdog. And just like Caruana yesterday and the last 2 days, I expect his weakest area relative to them will be opening preparation. So he'll have to survive the opening, get into a position that he wants to play. The opening is where you decide what kind of game you're going to try and reach. He'll have to survive that phase. But if he does that, he's halfway there and then he has the chance to play well. But, it's mental, it's physical. Can he take 5 or 6 hours of hard work, hard calculation? Can he stand the strain of this big title? Again, big titles put a pressure on you. The closer you are, the harder it gets because it's easier for you to think, oh, I've reached, and then your attention flags. Never letting that thought come in. All these will be a big test against him on one of the biggest stages against a very big opponent.
I do want to ask you, regardless of what happens in this final, of course, all of us, I think 1 billion people are rooting for Pragananda. He has already kind of achieved one important goal, which is, as you mentioned, playing in the Candidates 2024 to be the challenger to Lurin. Just how important is that, you think?
The candidates is actually the goal of the World Cup. I mean, people play the World Cup.
Welcome back. This is Nation at 5, and these visuals coming in from on your screens are from Johannesburg, where the Prime Minister has just about landed. He is going to be there for the next 24 hours attending the BRICS summit. Several bilaterals are also expected on the sidelines of that BRICS meeting. The Prime Minister embarked to Johannesburg earlier this morning. Remember, at about 7 a.m. is when he took off from India. Just about landing there in Johannesburg, yet to even get off the tarmac is what we're seeing. These visuals on your screens coming in from the airport in Johannesburg, where he will be accorded with a ceremonial welcome. He then heads to the hotel where he would be staying, where we are expecting several of Indian expats and the diaspora to gather there to catch a glimpse of the Prime Minister, perhaps take a few selfies with him, like they do in most countries that the Prime Minister travels to. Several tens of people gather, line up the streets of the city that the Prime Minister is in, and those are the scenes that are expected today as well from Johannesburg. But it's all going to be about business. Once he meets the BRICS leaders in just a short while from now, there is going to be an opening statement from all those leaders. Prime Minister Modi is expected to speak sometime post 8 p.m. tonight. Abhishek, my colleague, joining us, getting us more details. Abhishek, today we're just going to be seeing the opening statement. All the sessions happen tomorrow. There is no confirmation just yet if the bilateral between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping is expected to happen tomorrow.
So sources are very tight-lipped about this upcoming meeting. If it happens on the both sides, nobody is saying anything. But we are getting some information that the meeting could happen very well. And both the leaders are going to discuss about the bilateral issues. We know that Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping have not had any meeting ever since that Galwan clash has happened, where India lost 20 of its soldiers. And since then, Prime Minister Modi did meet Xi Jinping for a brief engagement during this G20 gala event in Indonesia. But that was very few seconds moment that the two leaders had met. But they did talk about the stabilizing of the bilateral relationship. This meeting that we are talking that could happen on the sidelines of BRICS could be more comprehensive and with a future looking ahead type meeting where India and China can discuss about the problems that has crept in the recent past and the solution that both the leaders can give a direction to. Also, Xi Jinping will be arriving in India to take part in G20 meetings next week. And in that context, it becomes really important that Prime Minister Modi, or the chair, as the chair of current G20 grouping, have a very cordial meeting with all the leaders to steer the meeting, the upcoming G20 meeting in Delhi, away from any controversy, and the joint declaration could be reached upon by all the leaders in a very unanimous way.
Right, but it's also important to look at what the issues are that are expected to be raised at this particular BRICS summit that happens over the course of the next 24 hours. But now we're learning that the Prime Minister has landed in Johannesburg. Those visuals just coming to the fore on your screens as he deplanes in Johannesburg. There you see the ceremonial welcome that is going to be accorded to him. He is going to be headed to the hotel shortly, from where he is going to be meeting with the BRICS grouping leaders in just a short while from now, many of whom have already arrived. Remember, Xi Jinping had arrived earlier today. All eyes are going to be whether on that bilateral happens or no tomorrow, but the Prime Minister there getting that ceremonial welcome in Johannesburg. As he leaves the airport premises, we are perhaps going to be seeing glimpses of the diaspora of the expats lining up the streets of Johannesburg all the way to the airport, like all the way to the hotel that he's staying at, like we've seen in many other countries as well. For now, these visuals that are coming in live from Johannesburg are of the Prime Minister landing. He has a jam-packed schedule for the next 24 hours, post which he is going to be heading to Greece as well. There is a diaspora event that is planned for the Prime Minister in Johannesburg, for which the diaspora is looking forward to. Many issues as far as the global south are concerned are going to be raised in the course of the next 24 to 48 hours, not just during the BRICS summit, but also with the key engagement that the Prime Minister has with several of those leaders on the sidelines of the BRICS summit. terrorism, economic cooperation are going to be those two crucial issues. Whether or not the Prime Minister sends out a message to China as far as its expansionism is concerned, as far as its aggression along the borders is concerned, territorial integrity is something the Prime Minister has often spoken of in the past, veiled jibes taken, veiled messages sent out to China and Pakistan as well. This particular forum, China is going to be present, Xi Jinping is going to be there. Whether those messages come out strong and clear, loud and clear, that is something that we will keep an eye out on. Abhishek now joins us, getting us more details of what to expect from here on. Abhishek, at about 8:10 p.m. This evening is when the Prime Minister is going to be making his opening remark ahead of the BRICS summit. But what happens in the 3 hours prior to that?
Of course, the Prime Minister will be, he's going back to his hotel, and where some preparation will happen as to what are going to be the discussion. Maybe Prime Minister and his team will also decide about the next 2 days that the bilateral meetings are going to be scheduled, because yesterday also the Foreign Secretary has said that it is an evolving process, and the plan has still not been finalized about Prime Minister's prospective bilateral meetings with the leaders, because about 40 leaders from about 40 countries are gathering in Johannesburg right now, because after BRICS, there will be BRICS plus meeting also, where Prime Minister will have an opportunity to interact with so many leaders from across the world, leaders from UAE, Saudi, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and so many other countries as well. And before that, Prime Minister is having a meeting with BRICS grouping, where 20 minutes detailed speech or time will be given to each leader, and they will be, talking about their priorities, their concerns, and how to solve the concurrent global and regional issues.
Right, Abhishek, do stay on with me. Former diplomat Anil Srigunyat now joining us here on this broadcast. So thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18.
Thank you.
What are you looking forward to as far as this BRICS summit goes? What do you think should be the top 3 things that these leaders need to discuss, and that is the need of the hour?
The need of the hour essentially is the global order. What is happening, that is very important. There is a transition that is taking place. The impact of the Russia-Ukraine war is extremely important. And secondly is what is happening to the sustainable development. One of the other important things that the leaders will be working on. Of course, there is expansion of itself. Then exactly like how the currencies are to be used for trading and for other purposes among the members. Essentially how to democratize the multilateral institutions. Those are different issues for India, and for how to create supply chains. Now, in which, of course, now here you have China, which has been accused of essentially disrupting. You also have some frictions in the grouping, but at the same time, they have to find exactly how they can arrive at some kind of a consensus for meeting all these major challenges.
Right, so all of that is going to be extremely important. But one thing that several observers here in India and outside, of course, are looking at is a possible bilateral meeting that could happen between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping. This also comes at a time when 19 core commander level talks have happened between the two countries, but sticking points still remain as far as de-escalation along the line of actual control is concerned. Do you think that is something that would be on the Prime Minister's mind, and we could expect this meeting to take place?
Well, even though it is a multilateral institution, but at the same time, it is important that the bilaterals do impinge on its health. So it is important that China stops its hegemonistic attitude, and if it wishes to continue working with India, and India wishes to continue working with the grouping, then China addresses India's concerns. There has to be a mutual respect, activity, and mutual interest, and therefore I believe that discussions, whether in a format which is formal or informal, it is important, and we are also looking forward to welcome President Xi Jinping for the G20 summit. So it's quite likely that the leaders might meet. Whether the format is, that will be what will be seen in due course. Since we are discussing at different formats, we have discussed at the foreign ministers, we have discussed at the NSA level, we have also discussed at the border, as you mentioned, the commander levels. So there are discussions going on how to diffuse the situation and sort key cantankerous issues between the two countries. And I think it will all depend a lot on China also to show these kind of confidence built, so that we feel a bit, our concerns are assuaged also.
Absolutely, that kind of messaging would be taken forward by the Prime Minister, whether that bilateral happens or not. Perhaps even in the opening remarks that he would make today before the BRICS summit, we could be expecting some of that messaging coming through as well. But Mr. Trigunia, thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Former diplomat Achal Malhotra also joining us here on this broadcast. So thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. We are expecting for that bilateral, at least a pull aside to take place between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping. Whether that happens or not, over the course of the summit in itself, do you expect the Prime Minister to raise issues that have been concerning India and many within the Indo-Pacific region as far as China's aggression is concerned?
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned about the two possibilities. Like, we are going to have G20 and we are expecting President Xi Jinping also to come. And I think on the eve of this, the interaction between our concerned, defense authorities and the foreign on the border issue, I think they have been accelerated. And probably an effort is being made to create a sort of a conducive atmosphere for two of them to have a bilateral meeting in India also if possible, or at least to make sure that atmospherics is, kept under control. Now, as far as raising the issues is concerned, India has, irrespective of which forum is there, has always raised the issues which in India's perspective must be raised. India has done so in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization also. In the presence of Pakistan, China, we talked about terrorism, the need to, rein in the state players, and so views will be exchanged. The BRICS, of course, the opinions differ whether it's losing its shine because of the new configurations. And mind it, BRICS is a completely non-Western organization and represents essentially the interests of the developing and fast-growing economies. But unfortunately, now the equations within the major players is probably creating a holdback on the kind of progress which was visualized when BRICS was formed. So going back to your question, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Mr. Malhotra, go ahead.
Yeah. So going back to your question, yes, I think it's very important that there is some sort of thought in relations between India and China, because we have drawn very strong bottom lines, which is unless there is a peace and tranquility on the borders, there can be no talks on no other issue.
Yes.
Whereas, the Americans and the Western world has adopted a slightly flexible approach. They are engaging China on some key issues, particularly issues which are of global dimension. And they say while they will do anything which is required to contain, Americans are not willing to compromise on Taiwan issue also, but at the same time they are willing to talk to China.
Yes.
So I don't know how long we can maintain this position, and whether it is good or not, only time will tell.
Right. Right, and it's a fine balancing act that will have to be done by India and by many other countries as well, as far as not just the BRICS grouping is concerned, but the G20 meeting that we are going to be seeing in just a few days from now as well. But Mr. Malhotra, thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Former diplomats J.K. Tripathi and Suresh Goyal also joining us here on this broadcast. J.K. Tripathi, getting you in first. We're talking about expansion of the BRICS grouping as well. There are several countries, over 20 if I'm not mistaken, that are wanting to be a part of this grouping. But it is going to be a fine balancing act for India as far as whose inclusion to push for, whose exclusion perhaps to be neutral on. Do you think so?
Yes, it will be a fine balancing act for India, but before that, I hope that G20 working group has finalized what are the perimeters or what are the criteria to judge the applicant aspirant nations. Because without any criteria or without any perimeters, this perimeter which India has been advocating for quite some time, it will be difficult to just welcome every Tom, Dick and Harry. Just because BRICS is BRICS has emerged as a very potent and heavyweight organization which works and which delivers. Just because of that, many nations, as you have rightly said, 40 odd nations are willing to join. That doesn't mean that we should allow everybody. Because that will of course that will help China to get Chinese cronies or small countries who are under the Chinese debt trap. They can be included in this one, so that they can every time they can support China any proposal which China puts up. But that is why India and Brazil will have to be very careful about, because there had to be some criterion according to which they have to be included. Because earlier when the BRIC was there, BRIC itself was a group of 2 non-democratic countries and 2 democratic countries, Brazil and India, and Russia and China non-democratic. But at least those 4 were emerging economies, fast emerging economies. Now why South Africa was taken in? Because South Africa was taken in at the insistence of China. South Africa was not a big economy. Democracy it was, but it was not an emerging or big economy.
Yes.
Because yes, maybe one reason for inclusion of South Africa is to balance regional representation. There was no representation from Africa.
Right.
And at that time, South Africa was the biggest economy in Africa. Though now Nigeria has already surpassed South Africa. So, crux of the matter is that India will have to see and will have to forcefully advocate that whatever criteria has been approved will have to be applied. And certainly,
and when the Prime Minister speaks of being the voice of the global South, we'll have to ensure that India puts forth that leadership position and assumes that position for the world to follow. Mr. Tripathi, thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Suresh Goyal, former diplomat, also joining us here on this broadcast. Sir, I'd like to ask you, we were talking about the Fine Balancing Act, about groupings like the BRICS, but there are many observers who believe that several of these groupings do not really serve the purpose that they were intended to. Do you believe that's also the case with BRICS, and if so, what changes need to be made?
I think he's very, very nice remark, and he said that there are so many groupings which have come up. Absolutely, you're quite right that after the decline of USA as a superpower, and then there was a promise that there will be a single superpower or multilateral, etc., a number of organizations, and often we don't even know what purpose it has, to be very honest. Now, for
We'll try and reconnect that line. Suresh Goyal, former diplomat, speaking with us here on CNN News 18. But these visuals that you see on your screens are coming in from Johannesburg, where the Prime Minister has just about landed. These scenes coming in from outside the Air Force Base, where he's just landed. He is going to be en route the hotel before he meets with the BRICS summit leaders, before the BRICS summit happens tomorrow. And of course, the opening statement takes place between all of those 5 leaders. Abhishek Jha, my colleague, continues to be with us, getting us more details. Abhishek, we're already seeing the kind of enthusiasm right outside the Air Force Base, where the Prime Minister just about landed. This perhaps is only going to increase as he makes his way towards the hotel.
Of course, that is a hallmark welcome that Prime Minister gets most of the time when he travels abroad, where Indian diaspora always waits very enthusiastically and very energetically. He gets those welcome, and South Africa, which is no exception, especially it's a place where Indians have a history of being there, going there as a indentured labor, and then in the last few decades we have seen Indians have quite an influential position in South Africa, both in business, social and political life in South Africa. So clearly there could be possibility that Prime Minister Modi will also have a chance to engage with the diaspora present in Johannesburg. There are reports that the schedule is very tight, so the information has still not been confirmed. Apart from that, Prime Minister's official engagements of BRICS also starts few hours from now, where Prime Minister will be having first open session with the BRICS leader participating, all 5 of them. They'll have 20 minutes detailed speech where they will be outlining their priorities and their concerns in the current global context. Especially, we know that this BRICS is happening after 3 years of gap. In-person meeting of all the leaders is happening after 3 years of gap because of the COVID pandemic. The travel was not cordial. And also, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has created wide rift at the geopolitical and geoeconomic scenario, where we are seeing increasing problem of fuels, soaring prices of fuel, short supply of food grains and fertilizers. Then there is this supply chain constraint or disturbance that has also happened because of the over dependence on the Chinese manufacturing capacity. So all these issues will be discussed when the leaders are outlining their own priorities.
Right. Abhishek, do stay on with me, but the Prime Minister is already in Johannesburg. What lies next for the Prime Minister? It's not just engagements with the diaspora, but several world leaders are congregating there for the BRICS summit. Take a listen to what the Ministry of External Affairs had to tell us about what's on agenda.
In South Africa, in Johannesburg, my Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, has just landed on his visit to attend the 15th BRICS summit. Behind us, we have, as a special gesture, the Deputy President of South Africa, who is here at the airport to receive him. A formal ceremonial guard of honor is going to be extended to him. As you can see, the South African side is now going up to the aircraft to welcome the Prime Minister here. The Prime Minister has a packed schedule here. Later in the day, he's attending the BRICS Business Forum, the leaders part of the ceremony. And then he has a close retreat with the BRICS leaders. Tomorrow is the open and closed ceremonies of the BRICS Summit. And day after is the outreach sessions with the number of guest countries that South Africa is invited to interact with the BRICS leaders. We will keep you updated of development.
All eyes are on the Prime Minister there in Johannesburg, and CNN News 18 will keep getting you all those updates. But for now, it's a wrap from my side here on this edition. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Brought to you by.
Carlsen is playing the World Cup because he has never won a knockout tournament. Slightly different motivation.
Yes.
But the candidates is important because if you play in the candidates, and that's a difficulty all its own. And if you can win that, then you get to play the World Championship. So for Prag, those are the more important goals. However, he is getting the chance to play a highly motivated opponent at a very, very big, on a very, very big stage. That kind of practice.
There is already a lot of talk about this final, particularly because Pragyananda has beaten Magnus Carlsen in previous events, and actually that's how he shot to fame in India as well. But before I get to that, after his semi-final win last evening, Pragyananda talked about how it's his defensive skills that have been saving him. He almost said that, he's been on the verge of losing a lot of these games, but somehow he sticks it out. What have you made of his journey so far and his chances in the final?
Look, chess is like many sports. You don't win only by the great moves. You win by the games you don't lose. Every half point plucked here and there adds to your score. So Pragyananda has done an amazing job. I would go further. Since June this year, he has played 3 events. He's played the Global Chess League, he played a tournament in Hungary, and now he's playing the FIDE World Cup. In all 3 events, he's playing unlike the Pragyananda even that we knew before, who was already one of the world's best juniors and one of the world's most promising talents. But in these 3 tournaments, he's raised his level enormously. But Carlsen is playing at one of his best levels too. So it's going to be challenging. Now, Pragyananda needed to rely on his defensive skills a lot against Caruana yesterday, because Caruana is one of the best players in the world, one of the best prepared players in the world, in openings especially. So Prag had to survive a lot of difficult positions, but he's been much more all-round. He beat Arjun, he beat some other players in the World Cup with his attacking skills. So he's been drawing from multiple skills as well. But he will be sorely tested by Carlsen, make no doubt about it.
Do you think some of his previous wins against Carlsen will make a difference, mentally at least, for this 18-year-old? Because this is a humongous stage for him. The first final he's made. In fact, a measure of his growth is from the fact that in the last World Cup, he was eliminated in the 4th round. And this time, he's beaten the world number 2 and 3 en route to setting the date with the world number 1. Do you think it would help him that he has faced Magnus Carlsen multiple times before and has actually won against him, even though this would be a different stage?
Yes, it would help a lot. Definitely, knowing that somebody has resigned against you once, that you've done it once, you know that it's possible. A lot of people, when they play Magnus, they're not even sure what is possible. But he knows that he can do it, but equally he knows how strong Magnus is. So, but that's something to draw from. I've done this before. When an opportunity arises, I've punished him before. And as much as Prag knows it, I think Magnus knows it as well. So Magnus will be just a little bit wary thanks to those wins. These things always help.
Yes, actually Magnus Carlsen said after one of Pragananda's previous victories that we all want to be like him. So this young 18-year-old boy has a lot of fans even amongst his peers, if I can call them that. Just the journey that Pragananda has had is enormous.
Yes, very much. He has a lot of fans, and somehow people like calling him Prag, and they like looking at that name and thinking, what's going on here? I can add that there was a joke that he's a new Indian, but he's still got Anand in his name.
Oh.
But anyway, he's actually very popular. He has many fans, and most of the top players think of him very warmly as well. On top of that, you only have to see his mother and his sister, and you root for the whole family. It's very touching.
Absolutely. Anand, I did want to touch upon the fact that you talked about Magnus Carlsen, that you've punished him in the past, but you did lose your World Chess Championship title to Magnus Carlsen. Have you first of all spoken to Prag at all and shared any tips or any kinds of words of encouragement?
We have discussed Carlsen on multiple occasions, of course.
Yeah.
But I haven't been talking to him much during this World Cup. When I was in Baku, I spoke to him a few times. But mostly, a chess player at this moment is in their own bubble. And I'm not sure what it would do to him. And by the way, it's not like his journey here was predestined. So in every match, I thought, my God, he must be nervous. I'm not going to get close. I think he has a support system. He depends on his mother and perhaps his sister to say the right things at the right time. If he reaches out to me, of course, I'll help him. But he's very focused, and I respect that right now.
Yes.
But through, even in our time at the West Prajanand Academy, I've interacted with him a lot, given him a lot of tips. But this is not the time to butt in.
I understand that. I do want to ask you, this is not just about what happens between the years or on the 64 squares. When you're playing such championships, it's a lot else that also matters. From your experience, what is that one thing that is truly crucial for somebody in Pragananda's shoes tonight, apart from his game?
Pragananda's level is high enough, and right now it's very high. So if you don't take his actual rating, but his performance rating, the clip he's performing at, it's much higher. And therefore, the difference between him and Magnus is not purely technical. I mean, certainly Magnus has great technical skills. The difference will be mental. Can he be tenacious like he has shown before? Can he take opportunities when they come up? Can he simply sit there and make good moves, one after the other, without his judgment wavering? It will be mental. What happens today and tomorrow will be mental. It won't be their chess abilities. That both of them, it's high enough.
Yes. So how did someone like you prepare? Just give us an idea of what really transpires in your mind, what your routine is like before a big final like this. Maybe, I'm sure every chess player would be a little bit different too, but maybe that will give us a bit of an idea of how you prepare.
It's a lot of visualization. You're constantly thinking, where will he strike? What will he do? If I was sitting in his room right now and looking at my games, what would I aim at? You're trying to anticipate moves. You're trying to anticipate situations. You may also think, if we unexpectedly stumble on this, can I cope with the challenges? Will he be able to cope? Will I be able to cope? There's a lot of visualization going on, but equally you want to relive your past experiences in this situation and think, what are the things that went wrong? What are the things right? How do I close that gap? It's a lot of that. It's a lot of fretting and trying to guess. Because, if you guess correctly, that's 50% of the journey.
Yes. Could nerves be an issue? Because just because of the fact that, Prag is younger and less experienced than Magnus Carlsen, certainly as far as the stage is concerned?
Nerves are always decisive at a stage like this. Also, remember, both of them want this very badly.
Yes.
And they waited a long time for it. And
Good evening and a warm welcome. I'm Griha Atul and you're watching Viewpoint. The Laiva genuflecting before a yogi, and not just any, but the Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, and that's what has generated the controversy that the viral image featuring him is generating for a while now. Even though Rajinikanth, who plays by few rules of stardom and remains a deeply spiritual man, himself described his gesture towards Adityanath by saying, and I quote from his statement, "A sannyasi or a yogi, even if they are younger to